mute. Somehow I already have 3 participants. Wow. In the first second? I wonder if that's real. Anyway, so theoretically those people are in. And, oh, by the way, somebody told me last time that the other people were like, they were hearing the other people talk to each other. And I wonder if there's any way I can mute them. Manage participants? Mute all. There we are. Okay. They told me I should have done that before. Let's mute them because apparently they were talking and I couldn't hear it and other people couldn't hear the lecture. So, all right. There's a bunch of people in. I recognize some of these people are like actual students and stuff. Cool. All right. So, Tim sent me some slides and I put them in my downloads folder, so they should be findable. Should be like the last thing I got. This is it, CNET 09. I think this is it. Good. All right. And so let me just say a little bit of an introduction to Tim. Tim is the network administrator here, and I am the envy of other college teachers. When I go to conferences, I tell them that I'm in good relations with Tim, and we can actually do like security audits of the campus infrastructure. Everybody else, there's a huge barrier. The guys that run the network and the teachers have nothing to do with each other, and they can't. Like each other. What's that? They actually don't like each other. Yeah, they don't like each other. The teachers are mad that those infrastructure people keep blocking everything, and the infrastructure people say those teachers are lunatics, and I'd never let them at my stuff. And it's not that way here, and that's because you're cool, which is awesome. And that's true. And people, I tell them, my students did a security audit, and that actually helped because when we had a crazy CTO and we needed someone that had an independent assessment of the security, we had one. And so it's great, and it's because you're such a cool guy. On top of that, he knows a lot about networking and security. He teaches Cisco and stuff. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Tim. Okay, and I don't know if you want to sit on that thing or move it out of the way. But
just put it into
and this thing here, you should be able to make it like full screen. Let's see.
And then there's the mic. Are they picking it up?
Yeah, that's okay. Pretty good mic. They should be picking it up. Let me figure out how to make this full screen. View. Single page.
There's a slideshow. There was a slideshow.
This library. Oh, go ahead. Try the slideshow too. Would work. This or the other way, whichever way you like.
Yeah, I just kind of like to do the.
So put your name on that. It's worth extra credit to go to this thing.
Oops.
And to go around with it.
I like real mice.
To be a little friendlier too, I suppose. Let's see. There. And there should be some little lights.
Okay.
Little lights. Maybe no little lights. Oh, there they are.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Yes, great. Hi, thanks everyone. Thanks, Sam. So really happy to take time out to talk to students. And I'm glad we have a good working relationship. I've been at City College about 15 years, and I came from startups. And then when I got a job at City College, I met the CNIT department chair at the time, Pierre Theory, and met him right away. And I just assumed that he was one person that I absolutely had to work closely with to help as much as I possibly can. I just assumed that was part of my job. Other colleges, they don't think that way at all. So anyway, we just built on that working relationship. And, you know, I've been able to come in and talk to students. We applied for grants. We got a lot of grants. We were able to kind of build up a training program across the state and partnered up with other colleges across the country. And so we quickly realized, you know, all the colleges face the same challenge across the U.S. and then to a certain extent around the world. And we quickly realized that, you know, we were able to all find each other. The ones that want to do like innovative things. We wanted to offer, you know, advanced classes. We all have to kind of have our goals of having a minimum number of students. You know, you can't have a class with 3 students, no matter how cool the class is. So we partnered a lot with industry, obviously built on the Cisco Academy, but also now there's the Red Hat Academy is really strong. There's different other tech companies that are very much involved in reaching out to education. And so anyway, I just really like to kind of help out and describe what we're facing at City College and some of the challenges that we have, you know, to kind of use that to enhance your learning experience. So as I go through this, I'll probably talk maybe like 40 minutes or something like that. So please ask questions as we go through. I got about maybe 20 slides or something like that. And so what I like to do initially is just let you know the scale of what we deal with at City College. So I'll show a map in a minute of our sites around the city. But this shows you what we kind of deal with in descending order. So, you know, a lot of desktops, a lot of IP phones, you know, just things like printers and scanners take a lot of our time. Believe it or not, there's fax machines that people really still want their fax machines. And we even that alone, it's like, oh, just get rid of those. We don't need those. But you look into it a little bit And even though we don't necessarily send out faxes, we have to receive a lot of them from, say, the Veterans Office, through the Veterans Office, or for different state-sponsored programs. So city and county government or financial aid, the federal government might send a lot of faxes. So we have to keep these things up in order for our departments to function and provide needs to students. So things like that on the surface appear to be either simple or something you can get rid of. Once you start looking into things, it's a very complex environment of we have college requirements, then we have a lot of federal requirements. So for example, we don't want social security numbers from anybody. We switched years ago to use a student ID number. But in order to get federal financial aid, you need to enter your social security number. So right away, now we've got 15,000 students or so that have entered their social security numbers into, some financial aid documents and kind of get into our systems and things. So anyway, we've kind of been growing quite a bit. I'm going to talk about the Wi-Fi in a few minutes, roughly about 190 Ethernet switches. So it's kind of the other thing too. I was hired as a network manager 15 years ago, and we mapped out, we built this big metro fiber network, et cetera. But that's a full-time job. It was a full-time job when I got hired, and it's still a full-time job. So all these other things kind of come into play. We didn't have our own phone system when I started, so that had to be added to the workload. And now, security, information security. We always had firewalls, but it was never to the point where all these entities around the world absolutely doing everything they can to steal your information. That's relatively new. And so the field of security is so broad. There's so many things we could do. We could literally have our own department, but we don't. We can't, get the funding, or we can't hire people. So we don't have anyone specifically dedicated to information security. And most colleges in California do not. Most community colleges, anyway, don't. But you look at Berkeley, I go online and they have like 25 people in the information security over at Berkeley. So we definitely do everything we can. We really need to prioritize what's important and not worry about the small stuff. So you just don't know what's important necessarily. You have to assume that only the paranoid survive to a certain extent. And so you have to take everything seriously until you really kind of understand what's involved. Yes?
This might be some question you might answer on. Do you find a lot of breaches or security issues that come up?
I'll show you. No, I would say we don't find a lot. We look hard. I mean, you're going to find as much as, based on the tools you have to work with. I'll show you some examples of the things we deal with. But I would say, we're not a real big target of, for outside entities trying to steal information. Colleges, all we have really are some identities. I mean, our crown jewel, we don't have intellectual property. We have a database of student records. But, I think thieves long ago figured out, go steal from the Charles Schwab, premier clients. They have a lot more money than community college students. And then other colleges, one big thing that the, hackers or other entities know that colleges have a lot of bandwidth, which is true. We have 20 gig of internet access and a lot of computing systems around, and that we don't have big security teams. So they really want to try to steal the computing power. Why pay to go into Amazon Cloud when you can just use a local college as your own cloud and put it together in some kind of a big botnet and then just use your computing power. So we probably have things like that we can't quite detect. But it's a good question. We try to determine, all right, what is actually going on. So this shows the physical map, and this dark red line is our fiber network that we use to connect all of our sites. This one in magenta here now to Chinatown, that's now complete. And we worked with the city and county of San Francisco to put that in for us. And it's really helped a lot from a networking standpoint. We just literally, you plug in we call it GBIC, or a optical device, electrical to optical device on each end. That's about the size of your finger on each end, and it lights up the city, the fiber from here to Mission Campus or wherever it is that you need to go. There's some limitations in terms of distance, but it's really a lot of flexibility, and it's a good investment for the college. And then for the city as well, they put in a big bundle of fiber, and we just keep 12 strands, and they had about 200 other strands of fiber that the city and county is using for their police stations and their hospitals and things like that. So we're really happy because it was an investment of bond money, which came from the taxpayers of San Francisco, and we really invested it back into the city as well. So this is what it looks like from a logical perspective. We have a metro ring and then an internet ring, and right now all of these are 1 gig rings. I'll show you our graphs a little bit. Kind of coming up now. This is our scenic connection. We now have newer ones and this is still a 1 gig connection at 200 Paul, which is a co-location center near Candlestick Point. And so that's where we pick up our internet service, but we've now brought in directly into this campus. The state of California, for all the community colleges, they provide internet service directly. So we have two 10 gig connections. One's a primary, one's a backup. And I'll show you the graphs towards the end here. We barely exceed a gig. So having 10 gig is it's great because it's something we don't necessarily have to fund ourselves, and it's helped us accommodate the growth that we have. Yes.
Is that 200 Paul? Do you guys work with like AT&T on like on all the infrastructure or anything?
At 200 Paul we don't, but AT&T delivers it from the scenic office in two different locations, one through Sunnyvale and another through Oakland. So it's delivered to us by AT&T. Whereas this one is just a fiber handoff.
I used to work with them, and like that address is familiar. I don't know. Like I was asking.
Well, definitely AT&T. All the carriers have a point of presence in that particular location. City and County has a data center in there as well. Level 3 is big there. It was RCN, then became Astound. Now they call themselves Wave. So they're the local cable franchise in San Francisco. So they're over there. So I'm going to talk about our Wi-Fi system for a bit. So we use Cisco Meraki. They still go by Meraki. So they were a startup here. They're over in Mission Bay. And we just partnered with them. We did probably 5 or 6 years ago at least, we did a RFP to get a Wi-Fi provider. And we're all just really impressed with Meraki's approach. It's cloud-based, so you just have the access points that appear to be like that. I think here we have it in that lockbox right there, the gray box. But no, it's plastic, actually. Yeah, we did some testing on because we thought about that too. And some places we try to hide them, other places they've been stolen. Not many, but we just try to protect the assets for the college. So we're really happy with them. We've been a beta customer as well, and they also wrote up this really nice article about City College. It's still out there under their customer education space. For a while, they had Stanford first, then us, and then we were ahead of like MIT and all these other. And I said to me, I was like, why don't you put us ahead of Stanford for at least? So anyway, now we're a little further down the line, but because they like to kind of promote some of the newer customers. But they did a great job too. It's a good photo shoot of the Mission campus. And like I said, we've been beta testing a lot of the equipment for them. So they would donate like $50,000 worth of equipment to us, and we would just beta test it, find the bugs, and there weren't that many, and a lot of them weren't noticeable. And a lot of the bugs, we would just run things, and they would log in and look at all of our data and things like that, and find the bugs and create a patch without us having to do anything.
I'm just curious, the city implemented the Wi-Fi on Market Street, so that has anything to do with
No, they initially I think they were working with Meraki. They now are working with Ruckus, I believe. But we talked about that too. It's like someone said, "Hey, the city's going to put Wi-Fi everywhere. We don't have to do anything." It's not the case, and it doesn't work indoors anyway. The city.
Is there a privacy concern of them looking at the data?
Well, no. I mean, they're the vendor. It's a cloud-based service, yeah. So they're not really they're just looking at the performance of the access points and not really monitoring the traffic throughput and things like that. But since it's a dashboard, I won't log in, but because it's kind of slow. Well, not slow, but with respect to a presentation. So what I did do is just do some screenshots of the graphs that are relevant. And so this is over the last 30 days. So all the things I'm going to show you is just data that came across my desk or is on my desk just in the last couple of days. So I'd like to kind of give everything, kind of a current feel to it. So we started around the 19th or something of August. So we're not quite. You can see here's where we started school, and so we now hit roughly 400, maybe our peak time, maybe 600 megabits of throughput at peak times during the day, and it's around between 11 and 12 typically, and we'll have maybe close to 3,000 clients on the Wi-Fi during those peak times. But it's pretty consistent throughout the day. This was Labor Day weekend. So the thing that's also interesting is, you've probably used the Wi-Fi, so you look at the SSIDs, we have guests, student, and staff. So we've been kind of experimenting with this over the years to try to find a method of authentication to verify, yes, you're a student, you can log in. And frankly, we gave up because you can see how many, 30,000 clients in the past month. And out of that, you would have at least 20 to 30% of the people who couldn't figure it out, no matter what we did. Yeah.
So for your own staff, you guys are doing like single sign-ons?
Yeah. We have single sign-on. I'll talk about that. It's a same system that the students use as well. Although the Wi-Fi, it's a little bit different. It's not tied into the single sign-on right now. And you have to just look at how these things are architected and what type of authentication methods there are. And, so every 30 days, the Wi-Fi system prompts you to log in again. We tried to make it like every semester, but that's something that they're limited. You have a choice of either every day, every week, every month. So you get prompted to log into the Wi-Fi every 30 days. You get that blue screen. So if you log in and, the first day of class, it's going to come up pretty soon. It's going to prompt you again. And so that uses your single sign-on credentials. So your WU number and whatever password you set in the within self-service or single sign-on.
Typically, single sign-ons like collaborate with identity management. So do you leverage that?
When I get to that, I'll kind of show you. But no matter what we did, the students, we thought, well, we'll just send you your password to your Gmail account and you can just go in and get that. Or you'll just use your student ID number and you'll be able to log in, no problem. Well, we have so many diverse entities around the city, a lot of non-credit students, and they have no idea what their student ID number is, or they have no idea they have Gmail. So, and all they know, they're at Chinatown, thousands of people with their gadgets, and they want to get on the Wi-Fi right now. And you have to help me, or somebody has to help me. And so the librarians are just completely swamped over there at Chinatown. And then, it would take like an hour to get a student to get them familiar enough with it. And we just had no way to win the situation. So we used to turn on guest service for the first 2 weeks and try to get everybody on board. And then we turn it off. And it was just chaos. And then we finally realized, well, what are we trying to do anyway, right? We limit a lot of things at the firewall. So it's just Wi-Fi. So we just have it open and there's no reason to. But we do still have, so you can log in as student or staff. And so what we've done now is just some rate limiting, which we kind of have to do anyway. So the guest service, your max throughput, if you do a speed test, will be 5 megabits per second. And if you log in as through the CCSF student, you'll get 20 megabit throughput. Pretty consistent. What I found, even the speed test sites have all changed and they get away from Java and then now they don't work anymore at all. And anyway, the one I found that works is AT&T speed test. If you still want to go out and test that, it's fairly accurate. But you can see then, so the past month, so 60% of our clients just use the guest. So of the students, it's a pretty good percentage, 31% are going through the trouble of even authenticating at all. And then staff is, 6%. There's not that many compared to the total number of people. Out of 30,000, our number of staff is, pretty small with respect to that. But, we're always getting requests, hey, there's a basketball game this weekend. Can you turn it on? Or we're having a job fair in the cafeteria. We need guest Wi-Fi. Or a teacher, I have a guest speaker coming. He has to have Wi-Fi. And anyway, so we just cut back literally like 10,000 hours a year of support. We did like 5 full-time jobs to try to do that. So anyway, so it's kind of interesting. A few of these down here, we do some testing with some of these other SSIDs, but you typically, so it's really easy. We can control them by access point. So, of all we have 400 access points around the city, and we can just control whichever SSIDs we want in any given one. So we try to standardize with it. So this is always interesting too with respect to our summary report of the operating systems. So definitely iPhones are the majority, over half. Mac total is up to 68%. Android 17%. And then you have Windows. Other is a pretty big category here. I'm assuming it's like Linux devices of some sort. I don't see anything else. That would be it. Chromebooks, and then Windows 7 is already here. So there must be about 151 Vista laptops or so that are out there, something like that. So this doesn't really matter a whole lot to us, but what we've noticed lately with there's more support problems with Mac laptops, MacBooks, than anything else. Even though it's a relatively small percentage, there's something weird about it. That we have a lot of times we have to whitelist them to get them on board. Other times people have to update either the firmware or the driver, the Wi-Fi driver for their Wi-Fi client. And so we'll get a support ticket through the help desk, and we do what we can to get them on board. A lot of our teachers now have an option of getting a laptop, a Windows or a Mac. So they pick a Mac, of course. And then for whatever reason, there's just these little something about them that prevents them from easily getting onto the network. So anyway, that's kind of the only reason that this really kind of comes into play for us. Otherwise, we try to just make everything as simple as possible. So this is the problem, though. So with respect to authentication, so we really would like, to actually authenticate onto we have a staff network and a student network, in our office spaces on staff networks. We have access to a few more things than the students would typically. But so we'd like to be able to authenticate directly onto the staff network. So right now, as the staff goes in, they're still pretty much on the isolated subnet, just like the students are as well. So no real major advantage, but we'd like to give them access to the staff resources. And so we're trying to find a good way to do that. And, we use what's called 802.1x as an authentication method. And we set it up, through the Meraki dashboard, and we get certificates on there. But it's going through to our domain controllers is the authentication database. It's not LDAP. It's LDAP-like or LDAP compatible. But at the end of the day, it's Microsoft's Active Directory. And so we get these weird error messages. So it says something like this. This presented a valid certificate, but it's not configured as a valid trust anchor for this profile, et cetera, et cetera. It just doesn't really sound very comforting. You can connect and get through. So that's the good part about it. But what we found since like a Windows laptop, if you join it into that staff domain, through our wired network, if you join it into the staff domain, you won't get this. It will then be, you won't get the certificate error. You'll connect in fine, and you're in an isolated network. But we don't know how to do. Most of these people are going to bring their own device, or even this. Here's another example. This is from my iPhone. So it definitely didn't like my iPhone said, well, that's not trusted. So, I could say, oh yeah, trust it anyway, and it works, but it isn't something we can really roll out to our employees. So we're a little bit hung up on this, and maybe the instructor and a few of the students can help us out with that dilemma. It isn't too many people that request it, but a few that are, like my boss, for example, why don't you make it work? Well, we'll give you that feature. So we really get, struggle a little bit. We're really trying to keep everything up across the whole city and give high availability and make everything work all the time. And so for people that really want certain features, it kind of gets put lower down our priority list. Unfortunately, we just, don't have time. We're really trying to solve the big picture things. But I don't know quite what this is. I think maybe it's because we're using Microsoft Active Directory and it's not a generic LDAP, that maybe that's why we're getting these. Does that sound like a reasonable reason?
I know I've seen the same thing at DEF CON. You have to install this goofy certificate and get on the wireless.
Yes, and so this doesn't even, if we turned it into a way here, install a certificate, and it went through without any error messages, we could potentially do that. But to put this out there and say just trust it anyway, that's not going to work. Even though it probably is perfectly fine.
But this probably means that you can easily put up a fake thing to get the same message, and you don't want to get them used to clicking.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, but it's like when you go use a browser sometimes and you go to like a self-signed cert, you get something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen this before, like private intranets and stuff, where they have their own certificates to authentication internally.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's just because they don't use outside sources like VeriSign and stuff to authenticate that certificate.
Right.
So we got to authenticate that certificate through like a time.
Well, we're going to try, we were using GoDaddy, we could try VeriSign. This group called In Common, they provide free certificates for all the colleges in California, all the colleges across the country. So it's really a great deal because we put certificates on everything. So that is the next step. We're going to try to get a paid cert for VeriSign, but I have a hard time believing all the colleges across the country that happen to use this certificate along with Active Directory face the same problem, and they all have iPhones, so it's something just doesn't quite seem right. So I'm going to work through that company too, that organization. Well, it's in common. It's sort of like Internet 2. There is an entity out there. They do have some employees, but it's not like customer support like you're going to get VeriSign. So I got to go through a process to try to get them to address this too. And again, it's like, I don't know, got better things to do, but anyway, we'll work on that. So that's kind of one of the biggest challenges that we faced. It's like, how many man hours, even if I don't do it, if I allocate someone on our team, how many man hours? We already put in a couple hundred man hours, and then we get to this. Well, so anyway, just to let you know that's kind of a big challenge that we face. So we do track malware. So we have a firewall from Palo Alto Networks, and so there's some anti-malware capability there. And so whenever I pull the report, and not just the top 10 users, this is the top 10 malware users over the past 7 days. I can stretch it out to the top 100. Almost all are Wi-Fi clients that have malware. And you can see this, they get a hit like this of, 1,000 connections. It's not 1,000 instances of malware. It's 1,000 instances of that malware trying to call out. It's outbound traffic that's being blocked. It's going out to a site that's been listed as not trusted by the firewall database, and it's updated quite frequently. And this, I just kind of stretched it out. I know you can't see all that. That's a really huge, long URL that's right there. So, this particular device, it had that IP address at that time, and so we would like to potentially notify that person, whether they be an employee or a student. We'd like to notify them that they have malware on their system. But for one, they can get on the network without being quarantined and having to have the latest antivirus things. So there is products that are mobile device management that would do all that stuff, but we think it's pretty costly, and again, kind of a big management headache. Now someone's quarantined, now they're really mad. Now they really want to get on the network because their assignments due. So with all the various devices that we have and the various operating systems too, it would really be a big challenge to try to do that. So then we'd like to notify them, but we have to set the DHCP, the IP address lease time down to only 1 hour in order to, because we have such a huge pool of IP addresses, we have to cycle through the IP addresses. So then we have to try to go by timestamps and try to see who may have had that IP address at that particular time. But then again, if they're all on the guest network, then there's no authentication trail anyway. So we just kind of keep going in a bit of a loop here. So this is pretty common type of technology. So this is URL filtering. So that's the other thing too. It's blocked, right? It's trying to go out to connect out to these suspicious sites, but the firewall blocks it. So we blocked the problem. So we've already solved the main issue, and now do we really want to try to go back and figure out why it's doing that? So that's where we just don't have the time and resources in it. You get up kind of like an 80-20 rule, where you get for 20% of the effort, you can get 80% of the benefit, and we could go further and further down this path and just get minimal benefit. So you clean off harmless after 12 hours of research, you finally isolate it to someone's device, and then they clean off malware that's not really causing a problem anyway. So those are the kind of decisions that we face in the security field, and I'm sure you guys would too. And when you work in it, you always have limited resources. You can't do everything. You have to really balance that out. So the firewall blocks it. So to a certain extent, problem solved. We do scroll down further down, and I'll be able to see some people that actually are on our staff network. So we will take action on that. We'll go and we run, the antivirus that's already there is obviously not doing exactly what it needs to do. So we'll run Malwarebytes or ESET, or we'll do a couple different scans to try to clean them. And we typically find things. Yeah. What kind of what? AV? So Microsoft Forefront. So we have a site license for Microsoft products that we pay for. So Forefront Endpoint Protection is what their product is called.
That's terrible. Microsoft has admitted that you won't need to have another antivirus after that because it does nothing.
Right, but almost every antivirus, I guess you could say that about almost any antivirus.
No,
right?
Microsoft is fantastically worse than the rest.
Okay.
They've been shamed out of it. When you have antivirus comparisons, they don't even include the comparison because it doesn't even count as maybe product. They've been humiliated utterly. Like Norton and everything is better.
Okay. So I have a hard time kind of explaining that to people. And so what we want to do is for our key desktops, and again, a lot of them are not all that important anyway, but we want to get an advanced endpoint protection. You know, we're going to look at the leading providers are FireEye and Carbon Black and people, and take that step of you know, really protecting the key desktops that we have on there. McAfee, yeah, we did. I think we still do have some McAfee, but mainly what's running is endpoint or forefront endpoint. So anyway, so these are all outbound URLs, and there's some information here from, oops, page down. I lost my page down function. Okay, so here's from a WebRoot threat report that just came out a week or so ago. Only 15% of the URLs are trustworthy anyway. So I don't think, I'm not sure where exactly it is that we would flag them in terms of blocking, but most likely these are the high-risk ones that are being blocked by our firewall. I don't think the others are necessarily you know, all being blocked, because I'm sure there's you know, more than 15% that actually go through. But what's interesting is when you see that all these URLs, and there's so many URLs that are really cryptic. You know, I don't know if you've ever kind of observed some of them, but USA is number one. 43% of the high-risk URLs are in the United States. So it's always kind of interesting for us from a geographic standpoint to start looking at this information. We don't do any like geo-blocking or anything. Some countries you go to RSA security conference or you talk to the vendor, say, well, just, you don't have any customers in Bulgaria, just block all traffic in and out of Bulgaria. And I said, well, no, those are our international students. They're actually really preferred, you know, for colleges. All colleges really want international students, and we want to be very global. We obviously have a lot of students either in China or you know, future students in China or our past students. So we definitely can't really do anything specific in terms of limiting data from various countries. So it's always kind of interesting to look at some of the sources. So here's something that's really relevant. So this vulnerability came out. This is the Apache Struts plugin, which I guess was partially, if not all, to blame for the Equifax hack. There's sure probably other things going on to it. Sound like they really had lax security all around. So typically what we'll do though is when we get these alerts through various methods and we read about it or hear about it, we say, all right, well, what are we doing in that regard, or what kind of threats do we have, you know, in that regard? So we, you know, it's we still really rely on the database of the vendor, in this case Palo Alto's, you know, threat team, constantly researching it, constantly updating their databases. You know, there's always going to be some 0 days and things like that you're not dealing with. But so here's a bit, and again, I know it's hard to look at the firewall logs remotely, but anyway, we clearly see some attempts to exploit that vulnerability. This is just, you know, from Monday. So a few of them, the attacker, various victims, our website primarily is a victim. Again, the firewall drops it, and we look at the source countries. Yes.
I don't think we are.
Well, we may or may not be. Well, we have Apache running on the website. So whether Struts there or not, I don't know.
Job of the extension, you have to have a lot more than Struts.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's something we run at this scale. I don't know.
Well, but anyway, people will try to find any vulnerability anywhere. Yeah. And so we just want to say, well, whatever it is, what we want to do two things. One is when there is a vulnerability that we become aware of, first you want to block or patch it on the host, and then you want to block it in the firewall anyway for anybody that even attempts to exploit the vulnerability. So you know, we can always see that those types of things, not most, but quite often, if we hear about a vulnerability and we get enough information, we can look through our firewall logs and say, all right, yes, that's occurring. We're you know, there are people trying to exploit us. Yes.
Let me just stop it for a minute because I have to restart the live stream.
Oh, okay.
It only lets me do 40 minutes per session. So you guys will have to rejoin in just a minute. All right, let's stop this one, which is here.